So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our all candidates meeting on December the 6th, 2024. Before we get started, I would first like to thank our host, the City of Kitchener, for providing such a lovely venue for our meeting today. They also have graciously organized a reception which will begin after the meeting and end at 5:30 as the Center and the Square staff need to prepare for an evening performance. So anybody who's virtual, sorry about your luck. I'd also like to take a moment to express my condolences to Kitchener Council member Stephanie Stretch, who's lost a family member, as well as Mayor Barry Verbanovich, whose mother passed away earlier this week. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of them. I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gathered today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Chinootan peoples. In doing this, I want to reflect on what it means to be doing important community work like we are engaging in collectively today, and also on my own individual relationship to this land. As a settler, one of the most important aspects of my individual journey towards truth and reconciliation has been to listen, and I am continually grateful to a community who shares their stories and concerns with me. I'd now like to invite Councillor Paul Singh here on stage to welcome us on behalf of the City of Kitchener. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you for acknowledging the staff here at Center the Square for their hard work of putting this together and inviting us to this very exciting space that we all cherish in the region. So if you don't mind, just a quick, just a clap of hands acknowledging the efforts of the Center the Square staff. So thank you once more to them. And again, I'm honored to be here on behalf of Mayor Barry Verbanovich and saddened, of course, of his loss. Otherwise, I think he would absolutely have wanted to be here, more so showcasing this exciting space and, of course, the continuation and dialogue of collaboration. We are thrilled to host you here at Center Square, a cherished gatherings place of entertainment hub for residents of our region and beyond for many years. Center Square renewal, the City of Kitchener is experiencing an exciting renaissance at the Center of the Square and the dynamic leadership of Executive Director Eric Olivier. With the renowned vision of programming, recent updates to its infrastructure, this space continues to evolve as a vibrant cultural space for a community. And that so is even more poignant in the space that we're meeting here today, a studio space that for a very long time has set back, not really being able to enjoy various reasons, especially due to the financial costs of it. But under Eric's leadership, very quickly, when he came on, he thought this is a space that should absolutely be fully utilized. And he's envisioned a collaborative approach to community programming, which is going to be, flourishing in the space that we sit here. Gatherings like this are a testament to the spirit of collaboration. They remind us of the shared responsibility we have in serving the residents of our region. Your presence here speaks volumes about your commitment to shaping future of our community. Today's agenda is filled with significant discussion, including Indigenous reconciliation and its role in shaping our shared future, regional planning for sustainable growth, climate action and responsibility and development, community safety, and the well-being of our residents. I'm heartened by the collective leadership displayed in prioritizing these vital topics. Leadership and vision is a perspective that we all have to kind of collectively come together towards. This gathering underscores the importance of setting our minds to the future and addressing the challenges and opportunities before us. Your dedication to these issues reflect the best of what leadership looks like in our region. Closing, I really want to kind of bring a wrap to the day's discussion. I look forward to hosting, in the space, as I've already said, the Center Square staff are excited to host a small reception following the meeting. And once more, on behalf of Mayor Verbanovich and, of course, members of council, extend warm wishes to you and your families for a joyous and safe holiday season. Thank you again, Karen, and thank you. Welcome all of you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for those insightful words, and thank you to the staff at Center and the Square for making all of this possible. We will now hear about Bill 23 Transition Overview, which will be presented by Danielle DeFields, the Regional Director of Regional Growth, Development, and Sustainability Services, in collaboration with Justin Reedman and Amy Wilcox from the City of Kitchener. So I would welcome you to this. So this is what happens when there's printing on both sides of the page. Sorry about that. I would now like to, I have the pleasure of introducing, the group I just talked about, just hang on, you get to come up later. I would now have the pleasure of introducing Brian Hill, Reconciliation, Equity, Accessibility, Diversity, and Inclusion, or known as the READY Team, Indigenous Initiatives Advocate of the City of Waterloo, to provide a presentation on reconciliation action partnership, strategies, directions, and the path forward. So welcome.
I'd like to take a moment first before we start. One of the things that we do with the Reconciliation Action Partnership is we're, as you can see behind me on the boards and also in your chairs, there's evidence of part of what we're doing as a partnership. Before we begin our meetings, we always have our opening words. I'm from the United Attempts First Nation, which is just outside of London. And one of the things that we do before any of our social gatherings, meetings, any event, is we give thanks and acknowledgement to those things in the natural world that have carried us to this point in our lives. In our language, in my language, we call it the Ganawela Dunksla, those words that are said before anything. And I'm gonna ask my friend, cohort Paula Whitlow, to come up and share those words with you.
Sego Skokwego, Ani, Bonjour, Usu, Halu, Kanze, greetings. Today we have gathered and we see the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. We are all thankful to our Mother, the Earth, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk upon her. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. To our Mother, the Earth, we send greetings and thanks. We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst and providing us with strength. Water is life. We know its power in many forms, from waterfalls and rain to mists and streams, rivers and oceans. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the spirit of water. Now let's turn our mind to all the fish life. They were instructed to cleanse and purify the water. They also give themselves to us as food. We are grateful that we can still find pure water. We turn to the fish and we send our greetings and thanks. Now we turn towards the vast fields of plant life as far as the eye can see. The plants grow and work many wonders. They sustain many life forms. With our minds gathered together, we give thanks and look forward to seeing plant life continue for many generations to come. With one mind, we turn and honor and thank all the food plants we harvest from the garden. Since the beginning of time, the grains, vegetables, beans, and berries have helped people to survive. Many other living things draw strength from them too. We gather all the plant foods together as one and send them a greetings of thanks. Now let's turn towards all the medicine herbs of the world. From the beginning of time, they were instructed to take away sickness. They are always willing and ready to heal us. We are happy that there are still a few special amongst us who remember how to use these plants for healing. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the medicines and to the keepers of those medicines. We gather our minds together to send greetings and thanks to all the animal life in the world. They have many things to teach us as people. We are honored by them when they give up their lives so we may use their bodies as food. We see them near our homes and in the deep forest. We are glad that they are still here, and we hope that it will always be so. Now we turn our thoughts to the trees. The earth has many families of trees who have their own instructions and uses. Some provide us with shelter and shade, others with fruit, beauty, and other useful things. Many people of the world use a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree life. We put our minds together as one and thank all the birds who move and fly above over our heads. The Creator gave them beautiful songs. Each day they remember or remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be the leader. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our joyful greetings and thanks. We are all thankful to the powers we know as the four winds. We hear their voice in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help us to bring in the change of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds. Now we turn to the west where our grandfather, the thunder beings, live. With lightning and thundering voices, they bring with them the water that renews life. We bring our minds together as one and send greetings and thanks to our grandfather, the thunders. We now send greetings and thanks to our eldest brother, the sun. Each day without fail, he travels the sky from east to west, bringing in the light of a new day. He is the source of all the fires of life. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our brother, the sun. We put our minds together to give thanks to our oldest grandmother, the moon. She lights the nighttime sky. She is the leader of women all over the world, and she governs the movements of the ocean tides. By her changing face, we measure time, and it is the moon who looks over the arrival of children here on earth. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our grandmother, the moon. We give thanks to the stars who are spread across the sky like jewelry. We see them in the night, helping the moon to light the darkness and brings dew to the gardens that helps to grow things. When we travel at night, they guide us home. With our minds gathered together as one, we send greetings and thanks to the stars. We gather our minds to greet and thank the enlightened teachers who have come to help us throughout the ages. When we forget how to live in harmony, they remind us of the way we were instructed to live as people. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to these caring teachers. Sorry, 'tis a season here. Now let's turn our thoughts to the Creator or Great Spirit or whomever you see as your higher power. We send greetings and thanks to all the gifts of creation. Everything we need to live a good life is here on Mother Earth. For all the love that is still around us, we gather our minds together as one and send our choicest words of greetings and thanks to the Creator. We have now arrived at the place where we end our words. Of all the things that we have named, it was not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send such greetings and thanks in their own special way. Yawagoa, Megwich, merci, thank you.
Uncle Paula, for sharing those words with us. And just for your information, that was the kind of medium short version of those opening. When we'd gather, the person who's speaking generally adds to it, because part of what their responsibility is to acknowledge those things, but also talk about their part in that as well. So sometimes they can go on for half an hour and a half, depending on the person and what they want to say, what they need to say. But in these settings, we try to refrain from that. But as those words are being said, we also talk to ourselves as well. So as Paula was reciting those words, I was going through that with her. And I was talking to myself about my acknowledgements, my thanksgivings, my uncles, my coaches, my thank yous for everything that the Creator has blessed me, has allowed me to be here today, joining fine people, to hear those words that we are, as a group, are putting together, and a pathway forward, as our document is called. So we do have a bit of a PowerPoint. Just on everybody's seat, I mentioned earlier, everybody's seat, there was some items. There were some items that are left for you, and those are for you. Some seats have a sprig of cedar. Again, that cedar is that medicine, that one of those 4 sacred medicines that Indigenous people utilize. And that other plant, or the other tree piece that's sitting on some of those chairs, is the white pine. It's part of that. If you look at the board over here, part of that goes back into a Haudenosaunee creation story. And it talks about what that white pine is. And it also talks to the Haudenosaunee Great Law as well. Over 1,000 years ago, when that was presented to the people and brought those people together at that time. There's a story in that's connected to our creation story that talks about that white pine was that tree where all those weapons were deposited. That white pine was laid over, and in that hole, that where the roots were, all those weapons of war were put in there. And that tree was stood back up. So that white pine for the Haudenosaunee people has become that tree of peace. So acknowledgement and recognition of that, there's a piece of that as well. And you'll notice that as we go through this, our plan, we refer to that white pine, that tree of peace, the cedar, the sweetgrass, the tobacco, and the sage as those medicines that we used to carry ourselves forward with. So in the beginning, a number of years ago, the CAO group got together, and with their like minds, they saw a need for a path to be started. So a number of years ago, that path was started. And here we are today, 7 years-ish later. We're moving ahead still. Last year at this time, we were here before you, and we did a presentation about what the Reconciliation Action Partnership is and what they were looking at doing at that time. So we took that information and we took those words, and we sat down as a group, the representatives from those 8 municipal bodies that make up the region of Waterloo. And we decided, and we talked, that we need to have a comprehensive plan. And how are we going to do that? So our member friends from the region who sit with us said, hey, we know some people that can help us out. So they graciously brought Kayla and Van into our circle. And we sat down for 4 sessions with them. And we talked about all these things that we were looking at, and how we were going to put them in place, and how we were going to put them in a understandable, meaningful way. So as a group of the Reconciliation Action Partnership, we did that. We sat down and we did it how all strategic planning is done. We had big giant pieces of paper around there, and we had sticky notes, and we had all kinds of things. But we added something different. We added that medicine. If you look on the screen, that's the medicine. That's the guiding piece of our work as a Reconciliation Action Partnership. Anything and everything that we plan, anything and everything that we think about and do, we utilize that medicine. We utilize that circle as a guide for us. Because when you look at that circle, it's divided into 4 sections. The mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical pieces that make up each and every one of us as human beings. All those 4 parts are there. Indigenous people use it as well. In those 4 sections, you can put in the four seasons, winter, summer, spring, and fall. Those four directions, east, west, north, and south. Those four sacred medicines, those four stages of life. A lot of our ideas and our thinkings come from that medicine wheel. And even when we plan to do something, we put it in that medicine wheel. Why do we put it in that wheel? Because it's circular. Because we always come back to where we start, from where we started. We think, we plan, we enact, and we review. And then we start when we go around again. Our work is not linear. Our work is circular. Yes, some of us may have joined that circle at a certain time over these years, but we're all in that circle together now. And we're moving. Because that's what those circles represent, is that movement, that motion, that never ending. There's no finish line. Reconciliation is not a race. Reconciliation cannot be plotted on a linear chart because there is no end. When we think back to when all of this began and the reasoning for what we're doing, you think back 400 or 500 years ago, a little bit longer than that as well, on how we got to where we are. So now the group of us that have been gathered, that brought together with the help of the CAO group. And we have to acknowledge those fine people as well, because it wasn't for them, wasn't for their support, it wasn't for their questions and their openness and honesty with us. I'm not sure how far we would be today. I don't think we would be the far as we got. When we sit down, when we talk to them, we share these words with them, when we share these ideas, we share these thoughts. And you can see it in them, that it's not just words to them. They're taking it up, they're picking it up, as we say. They're picking it up, they're holding it, and they're carrying it. Those things that we share with the group, Paula, myself, and our other, my niece, Stephanie. As Indigenous people, we have a responsibility to share what we have, what we know, and what we understand. So occasionally we do that. We step back and we say, okay, this is why we do this. Hence the cedar and the white pine that's on your chairs today. Because we talked about those things, and we taught our friends, we taught our group members about those things. Because we can't talk about them without showing them what it actually is, what it means to us. In the same way with these items that are on these boards, we can talk about them, but to show them, to help them through that, that's our role, that's our responsibility. That's the way I see it, because that's the way I was raised, and that's the way I was taught. So using that medicine, when we established that path, those directions, and we looked at a bunch of different things on how we were going to do that. Land use plan. Okay, where are we going to go? How are we going to do this? Put it in a medicine room. Let's talk about it. Everything else that we're looking at in reconciliation. Even the training programs, a lot of you are involved with reconciliation efforts. Reconciliation Action Partnership is currently looking at more training, to bring more staff. And that's where it's directed right now. It's directed at staff. Because you can't ask staff to do something without understanding what they're doing. The residential school system, reconciliation, to give them a better understanding of the Indigenous aspect of that. So beginning in the spring, we're going to be bringing forth some more training for you. Not just for a select few, but for everyone. Everyone's going to have a chance to be involved, learning about reconciliation, learning about the residential schools, learning about those things that Indigenous people carry and understand and believe and feel. And once we get the logistics of registering, signing up, and how that's going to play out, each and every staff will be given that information. They'll be given an option of joining it. And I hope they do. I really do. But it's up to us. It's up to the Reconciliation Action Partnership. It's up to the CAOs. It's up to administrative bodies to help that, spread that word. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to spread that word and that work that we're doing. Next slide. Membership, like I said, is made up of 8 of the municipal bodies in the area, in the region. You can see a list of people on the screen there. All those ones that are involved. From the region of Waterloo, Cambridge, Kitchener, City of Waterloo, Wilmot, Woolwich, Wellesley, and North Dumfries. I still have trouble with some of those names. My apologies, but I'm getting there. I'm learning. But those are just some of the names. Those are just some of the people who are involved with the Reconciliation Action Partnership. We have other friends, we have other helpers, we have other allies that are helping us do this work. I can only speak somewhat on the City of Waterloo because that's where I work. People like Michelle Lee, people like Pam, our friend. I know her name's up there, but I need to call her out. She's been a big help. Directors at the City of Waterloo, our commissioners, our city council and our mayor, they're behind us. They're rooting for us. And they're asking for that information as well. They're asking for that guidance. They're asking for that help. They're asking for that education, which we are glad to provide. Next slide. The beginning path, like I mentioned earlier, the CAO group back in late 20s. Sounds kind of strange when you say it that way. No, late 2020s, early, late 2010s or what. Put us on this path. And that path, it's not, if you look at that graphic, it's not straight. Because these paths that we follow, these paths that we take, they're not straight. They're like the streets of the region of Waterloo. I drive down these streets and I'm going like, oh my gosh, who designed these streets? But with any path that we're on as human beings, our paths aren't straight. Our paths take turns, they take twists. Sometimes you have to back up and take another path. But there's always somebody around there to help you. There's always somebody close by that can help you get back on that path, that good path. And that's part of what we're doing today. In your packages, you will see these graphics as well. Next slide. To today, where we got, I mentioned the strategic planning that we did with Kayla and Van's help. We looked at those different things and how we were going to do this. One of the things that the Ready team at the City of Waterloo has done, has adopted, and are doing our best to follow are those teachings of the 7 grandfathers. Those Ojibwe, those Anishinaabeg people talk about these 7 qualities, these traits of a human being. We're utilizing those teachings. And I mentioned the Haudenosaunee Grey Law, which talks about that as well. It talks about your role as a human being in this world, in creation. And it talks about those relationships as well. Under your relationship between yourself and your family, your nation, your community. It talks about those relationships, and that's what we're trying to do. We're building relationships. The City of Waterloo has taken some really nice steps in building those relationships. Back in June, they were presented and they were gifted 3 wampum belts that depicts those relationships. That 2-row wampum, that Hiawatha wampum, and that dish with 1 spoon wampum. Those are all specific timed treaties, agreements, understandings that were entered into by settler people and the Anishinaabe, or the Haudenosaunee people, and the Anishinaabe people at times as well. But when you boil those down and you take it back down to the base of what those are, it's about relationships. And again, that relationship that you have with the person next to you, the person across the street from you. Again, your family. But most importantly, your relationship with that natural world that we hold so dear. Because when we talk about that natural world, we don't talk about it in a place of ownership. We talk about it as in a place of partnership. Nature needs us, and we need nature to survive. And the evidence of that, as recently as that pandemic that we just went through. If you stand back and look at what happened, not just to our families and our friends and those ones around us who suffered through that, you look at how nature reacted to that. Our water starting to get clearer. Those animals were coming closer. You know, I even heard stories of whales coming closer to shore because we weren't doing what we were doing, disrupting their air, disrupting their world. And they noticed, nature noticed. So again, we're redeveloping that partnership now as we're going forward. And that's what our group is doing as well. We're nurturing those relationships. We started relationships. We started meeting with community. The very first one was very nerve-wracking, let's say. But the more they hear from us, the more they see what we're doing, the more they're understanding that what we're doing, the more support we're going to get. We're planning on having more sessions like that. That's the best way to talk to people, sit down with them, meet them, feed them, share that food, share those stories, share those understandings. Because if we don't know their story, how can we help them with that story? How can we help them make their story better, make their experiences better? And each and every one of us here today, that's our responsibility. When you walk through those doors in those buildings, that's what we do. The essence of what we're doing is building relationships, helping our neighbor, helping those people in our neighborhood. And sadly, sometimes we forget that. But we need reminders. That's what we're here to do today, is to remind you of that purpose. Very wise gentleman told me a long time ago, Mohawk elder named Tom Porter, Makosasne, very respected, well-known elder in the Haudenosaunee community, Anishinaabe community as well. He told me, he told us that those things that we understand, those things that we know, those things that we carry, they were kind of taken away from us, but they weren't hidden away. They weren't stored away somewhere. And the way he explained it to us was, you take a piece of paper and you tear it up, little wee bits. He says, that's what they did. They tore it up in little bits and they threw it into the winds. What's out there? So as we're in our travels and our journeys on that path, you may pick up that piece of paper and look at it and say, oh, I don't really know what that is, but I'm going to keep that. I'll just put it in my pocket. And on that journey, you may find somebody who has a similar piece of paper that may fit to the piece of paper that you have. So you share that with them because you don't own that. You're just carrying it. You share that with that person and that person will share that paper with you. And you slowly start, as you meet people, as you learn, as you understand, you start putting that paper back together. You start putting those words, you start putting those understandings back together. You start putting that picture back together. So on that relationship journey, that's what we brought forth with these ideas and understandings for the Reconciliation Action Partnership. The 7 grandfather teachings, the Haudenosaunee Great Law. Those are the basis for our efforts. The community understands that. The Indigenous community understands those 7 grandfather teachings. They understand that Haudenosaunee Great Law. And hopefully it helps them to see that we're true and honest about what we're doing. We're not just being performative. We're not just doing it just because. We're doing it because we want to. We need to. We need to be able to grow that feeling within ourselves as well. Next slide, please. So on that journey, like I said, that white pine, that tree of peace, that's a basis for a lot of what we're doing. When we talk about purpose, goals, and actions, we utilize that tree and we utilize those medicine roots as well to help us describe and understand and show and share those thoughts and feelings, understandings that we carry. Next slide. So like I said, we have these medicine wheels where we put all of those things in, all those thoughts and ideas on, and where we thought they should be in that cycle. It's kind of interesting, kind of fun how we did it. And again, I just want to acknowledge Kayla and Van for their expert assistance with that. They kept us on track because we did have a few times where we kind of went off the path and they brought us back and okay, we got to work. Let's do this. Next slide. So again, when I talked about those different efforts that we're looking at, you know, those actions, you know, those things that Indigenous people would like to see. A lot of people would like to see, not just Indigenous people. Yes, the focus of this group is on Indigenous people, but it's not just Indigenous people that will benefit from these things. The community will benefit from it as well. But it's a journey that we all have to take. That's a journey that we're all trying to take right at this moment today. Next slide. And again, looking at nurturing new processes. See, the funny thing about this process isn't new. It's not new to Indigenous people. Like I said, the Haudenosaunee Confederation started about 1,000 years ago. We talk about 4 different groups of people coming together and agreeing to work together, to have that understanding, have those shared ideas, have those shared spaces. 1,000 years ago. 500 and some odd years ago, people start coming over. And those Indigenous people at the time said, come on, we'll help you. We'll share this with you. We'll share that with you. And along that way, something happened. A lot of different things happened. But because of those understandings that we had, that we carried, and those understandings that the new colonizers had, they clashed. So a lot of stuff that we had or that we carried was kind of put aside because we were told there was a better way to do it. Okay, some of it is better, some of it's not. But the thing is, when our teachings, when we go through that medicine, when we talk about these things, it's a choice. As a human being, you make those choices, you make those options, and you look at those things. And how can I do this? These ideas and concepts that we're carrying now with the Reconciliation Action Partnership, they're not new. None of this is new. It's all very old thinking, all very old understanding. And we're bringing it to you. We're going to share it with you as best we can. Next slide. And of course, with any effort, there's always challenges. One of the challenges that we identified a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was when this group was put together, there were staff that were asked to sit in this circle, in this group. But for a lot of those staff, this work wasn't part of their regular day-to-day activities. It wasn't in their job description. So when I came in to the City of Waterloo 3 years ago, I heard the term working off the side of their desk. They did it because they believe in it. They understand it. So one of the challenges that we identified is that we need someone to bring it together for us. For the 8 groups that are involved, we need somebody to come together to say, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that. And to help organize and administrate all of this. The term firekeeper was brought up. Because Indigenous people, a firekeeper's role is not of a leadership role, it's of a support role. It's a helper role. That role that brings people together. So that firekeeper concept, rather than the administrative reconciliation, municipal lead, it's a mouthful. But for us, it's firekeeper because we understand what that firekeeper's role is, what that firekeeper means to everyone. It's going to bring us together. It's going to help us do that work that we're looking at over the next, I don't know how many years. And then you can see that graphic there, that firekeeper, that host, that center place is part of our community, part of our elected officials that are sitting with us today, part of those administrators that are sitting with us today. But what's missing in a lot of that is that the community. Sometimes the community doesn't have the feeling that they're being included. And that's something we want to change. We want them to be able to come to us and ask these questions and participate and help as well. Because the relationships aren't just one way. Relationships are 2 ways. Because there has to be a balance. And again, part of our teaching, part of our understanding with that white pine and these medicine wheels, that's what it's about. It's about helping. Putting your hands up and having somebody put their hands in yours. Having that trust that you're going to help them. The Indigenous philosophy and understanding is that way. We walk beside each other. We don't walk in front of them. We don't walk behind them. We walk beside them. And this group of people that are sitting here today, my friends, my sisters, we've been walking together for 3 years now, almost 3 years. And every time we sit down together, every time we talk, I learn something new. And I hope that I teach them something new as well. And that goes with the staff as well. Because we're asking staff to do a job that maybe some of them don't understand. The reason why that they need to do what they're doing or how they're going to be able to do what they need to do. Again, that relationship with your community. So as I mentioned earlier, we have some training coming up that's going to be available to staff to help them better understand a lot of these things that we talk about, that medicine, that white pine, the cedar, sage, sweetgrass, tobacco. You know, those teachings that have carried us for thousands of years. We're sharing them in the hope that that gift is accepted. We're putting our hands out, and hopefully that they'll put their hands in ours as well. So we're going to help staff, and we have been. Like I said, I've been at the City of Waterloo for 3 years now. Well, almost 3 years, a couple of weeks, 3 years. And I've met some amazing people. Some of them are sitting in this room. Whether they're staff or whether they're elected people, they're amazing, awesome people because they understand the need to do something, to help. And that's what I signed up for. To help. Many, many, many moons ago, I was given an opportunity, but I didn't understand what that opportunity was, but I've learned. So I want to appreciate the opportunity to be able to come before you today and explain as quickly as I could what the Reconciliation Action Partnership is, what we're doing, and our next steps. and invite you all along on that path as well. I just want to say, Uncle Miigwech, thank you for this time. Oh,
So before I introduce Brian, I talked about my own commitment to truth and reconciliation, but he's done a wonderful job of illustrating that as a government, we too have to show we're listening and creating action in the community. And I thank you very much for inviting us to walk alongside you and to move forward in a good way. So thank you so much for that. So next agenda item actually is the transition overview now. We're going to hear about Bill 23 transition overview, presented by Danielle DeFields, the Regional Director of Regional Growth, Development and Sustainability Services, in collaboration with Justin Reedman and Amy Wilcox from the City of Kitchener. So I'll invite you to the stage and I will vacate it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Yongo and Miigwech, for having us join you today and share an update on the collaborative Bill 23 transition in Waterloo Region. I'm Justin Reedman, General Manager of Development Services for the City of Kitchener, and I'm joined by Danielle DeFields, Director of Regional Growth, Development and Sustainability for the region of Waterloo. We're here today representing a working group of planning leaders from each of the 7 local municipalities and the region. Our presentation will touch on the collective efforts undertaken to prepare for the transition of planning responsibilities under Bill 23. Next slide, please. The transition working group was formed about 15 months ago with the general objective of developing a framework and transition plans for the smooth transition of planning responsibilities from the region to area municipalities, including the regional official plan. We have met regularly to develop a framework and implementation action plans to support the transition of roles and responsibilities, providing customer service excellence and a consistent experience and seamless service delivery. We will share more details on the key focus areas of the transition team later in the presentation today. Before we do that, we will provide the context for the changes in roles and responsibilities, and I'll hand it over to Danielle to walk through what Bill 23 is and means for Waterloo Region municipalities. Next slide, please.
All right, thank you, Justin, and good afternoon, everyone. As Justin outlined, I'm going to walk you through some of the background on what Bill 23 is and what it means for us in Waterloo Region. On October 25th, 2022, the provincial government introduced Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act. And Bill 23 transfers planning approval and long-term land use planning responsibilities from regional municipalities to local area municipalities across Ontario. This change has already taken effect in Halton, Peel, and York last summer. And the province has recently indicated that in Waterloo Region, their intent is to put these changes in effect on January 1st of 2025. Next slide. So what does this mean? Essentially, once in effect, the cities and townships across Waterloo Region will be responsible for long-term land use planning and the development approvals process. And the region will be a commenting body focused generally on regional infrastructure, services, and lands. Next slide. So delving a little bit deeper, this slide outlines what the change will mean from an area municipal perspective. In the new system, area municipalities will be responsible for long-term land use planning and will become the approval authority for plans of subdivision, condominium, and part lot control were not previously delegated. Area municipalities will also implement matters of provincial interest through the development approvals process. This includes considerations for land use compatibility, aggregate resources, and environmental features, among others. Area municipalities will be responsible for the application of the regional official plan and any future amendments. And Bill 23 will shift the approval authority of area municipal plans and amendments to the province. But there will be some types of official plan amendments that we expect will be exempt from provincial approval. Next slide. In the new system, the region will have a more scoped role as compared to today. Regional comments on development applications and area municipal planning activities such as official plans will be scoped to focus on areas such as where the region is a service provider. For example, infrastructure such as water, wastewater, and roads, where there's a mandate through legislation such as with source water protection and as the landowner. These are areas where the region has and will continue to provide community support and building communities across all of our great communities in Waterloo Region. In terms of the regional official plan, as I mentioned on the previous slide, the region will no longer be responsible for its upkeep. So the regional official plan will become an area municipal official plan, meaning area municipalities will have the regional official plan and their current area municipal official plans for a period of time. And the region will have the ability through an agreement, if requested, to provide assistance and advice to an area municipality with respect to land use planning matters. Next slide. So now that we've covered the basics of what Bill 23 is, we'll talk a little bit about the work of the transition team to date. Shortly after Bill 23 was introduced, a transition working group was struck. This was to bring together directors of planning, or planning heads, as we call ourselves, from across all the municipalities in the region. We've been working together to support a seamless transition in roles and responsibilities. And we focused on documenting new and unchanging roles and responsibilities, actioning what needs to be done to support a seamless transition, and engaging others in the dialogue and discussion, such as provincial staff, as well as Grand River Conservation Authority staff. We've also been learning from other regions and staff who have already received proclamation in other regions. We report into the area CAOs who have provided very valuable and great support for our work along the way. Next slide. So before jumping into the transition and the work that needed to be done itself, we spent some time working through our common objectives in supporting the transition. We developed 9 guiding principles to support a smooth transition and collaborative process. These principles have been important as we navigated the work that needed to be done with many unknowns along the way. The guiding principles that we developed were to advance the vision of the province as set out in Bill 23 in the local context of our region, to streamline the planning, development, and approvals process, to achieve a consistent process as much as possible between municipalities, to provide for certainty and consistency for the development industry, municipalities, and the public, and ensure there is no loss of service because of the changes, to avoid disruption or delays in the development review process. Next slide. To ensure clear expectations are established for all parties related to transition and transition support that considers operational needs, to deploy resources efficiently, including exploring joint procurement opportunities, to define roles and responsibilities for all municipalities, including the region, in the planning and development approvals process, and to recognize the talent across all planning services and support them in the transition of Bill 23. So I'll now hand it off to Justin, who'll provide an overview of the work that followed the development of the guiding principles.
Thank you, Danielle. And so the transition team identified 4 areas where it was beneficial to document the existing processes, articulate the desired future state, and outline risks and mitigation measures, amongst other things. These were the regional official plan policies, including how the local official plans are updated through this transition, approval authority for area municipal official plans and amendments, including background reports and secondary plans, the role of the region and each municipality in reviewing and making decisions on planning act applications, including matters of regional interest and municipal interest, and matters delegated by the province, such as archaeology, noise, and land use compatibility. Indigenous relations and engagement includes the development applications and official plans and how we continue the great work on engaging Indigenous communities. Next slide, please. For those 4 transition plans, there was approximately 15 actions that were identified, which required additional collaboration and development. These actions can be grouped into the following theme areas: documentation and outlining roles and responsibilities, policy updates, process development, data transfer, training, and support. Over the next few slides, we'll dive a little bit deeper into these themes in a little bit more detail. Next slide. Collectively, we understand that the changes introduced by Bill 23 have been outlined in the formal legislation, And the purpose of a memorandum of understanding between the region, Grand River Conservation Authority, and the area municipalities is not meant to supersede these regulations. The MOU is intended to be a relationship document and outlines the process on how the parties will work together while providing clarity for each other. Next slide. The transition team has been working together with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to ensure that ROPA 6 policies, mapping, and Bill 162, the Get It Done Act, are integrated into future municipal official plans. So can we go to the next slide? I think you missed the transition on that one. Actually, no, that was right. Sorry. Sorry about that. So regional staff are working with and will continue to work with area municipal staff to assist with policy interpretation of regional official plan policies. Next slide. We have heard from the province and from the development industry that standardization and consistency is important to them. With that in mind, there has been significant effort to streamline processes across municipalities while still ensuring flexibility. The team has reviewed study terms of references for things like noise and transportation studies and has developed standardized templates that each municipality can use. The team is seeking joint procurement for peer review consultants and has the ability to piggyback on the region's existing peer review contract in the interim. The City of Kitchener previously had delegated authority for plans of subdivision, condominium, and part lot control exemptions. A development services review was also completed by the City of Kitchener to streamline development approvals, and these processes have been documented and are available for each area municipality to follow, and support is being offered through the transition. Region and area municipalities have been working through the legal transition for in-process Ontario Land Tribunal hearings scheduled for post-proclamation, and work has been completed to articulate future demographic modeling and forecasting, including roles and responsibilities and how planning heads can work together to plan for growth. Next slide. The region has been working to transfer current data sets, including GIS thematic layers, to the 7 area municipalities. Each area municipality will host and be responsible for these data sets going forward. File transfers for in-process applications are being shared with area municipalities, and the region will ensure a streamlined process for municipal staff to request and retrieve the historical information and records that are needed as they move forward. Next slide. The City of Kitchener, with support of the Region of Waterloo, are preparing and delivering training content to area municipalities to support team development to process plans of subdivisions, condominiums, and part lot control exemptions. A development industry open house is also scheduled for the afternoon of December 19th, where planners, developers, and others are able to connect with transition team staff and understand the transition process and meet the representatives from different municipalities. Next slide. Staff are continuing to work collaboratively with each other and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Region and area CAOs are being updated at regular intervals. Frequently asked questions and updates will be released shortly, and the development industry will be updated on December 19th. Before we close today, it is important to acknowledge all of the efforts by planning heads. While Danielle and I had the opportunity to share this update, this would not have been possible without significant efforts of Bob Bjerke, Deanne Fries, Garrett Stevenson, Hardy Bromberg, Harold Krafka, Joel Cotter, Rosa Bustamante, Shannon Black, and Tim Van Hinty, along with many others who have supported us along the way. Thank you for your time and attention today.
So I think the plan is to take questions at the end of all the presentations. Is there anyone who has a burning question, or can you write them down? Okay. All right. We're going to continue on with the program. Thank you very much, Justin and Danielle. The next presentation is we'll be hearing about is the high performance development standards. And I will ask Matthew Day, Natasha Ng from Waterloo Region Community Energy, Janine Oosterveld from the City of Kitchener, and Tim Van Hinty from the Township of Wellesley to provide their presentation. Is everybody here, or are you two the designated hitters? Okay. So save your really hard questions for the other two.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. My name is Matthew Day. I'm the Executive Director of WR Community Energy, partnership between the region of Waterloo, the cities of Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and our three utilities, Grand Bridge Energy, Nova Power, and Kitchener Utilities. Our job as WR Community Energy is to make sure we're all rolling in the same direction when it comes to the energy transition. One of the projects that we're leading right now is the high performance development standards. So we'll talk about that today in advance of our full scale phase 3 engagement, which begins on Monday. Next slide, please. So as technologies change and as energy changes, our communities change. And as our communities change, our planning needs to change as well. The high performance development standards is the place that integrates our energy concerns and our climate challenges into one place. And this is necessary to meet our climate targets. In my world, there's a saying, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it, or you can't manage it if you don't measure it. This is that. This is the tool that allows us to measure our climate change impact. One of the planners told me once, we have no idea if our buildings are getting more sustainable or not. And that's a challenge. Next slide, please. This is a really positive together-ing story, similar to what Justin was talking about earlier. We have all of our planning departments in one working group to design these standards together. We're very good at this in Waterloo Region. We collaborate. We're collaborating with our utilities and our municipalities and the region to create one harmonized standard. In fact, this is the first high performance development standard in the province to take a harmonized approach. And this will streamline a process between our policies, ensuring we use the best practices and submission requirements. It is designed to be applicable to all municipalities in Waterloo Region. Next slide, please. The question of legal authority comes up a lot, and we are paying attention to it. In particular, people talk about the planning authority versus the building code. The way that I see it is that planners look at water and the builders look at plumbing. Planners look at traffic, and the building code looks at planning parking garages. The planners look at energy, and the buildings look at pipes and wires. This is the same thing, except now we're looking at climate change. And this is especially important to our community because we are utility owners, after all. So to be very clear, this is not a building standard. This is a planning tool. We are not going to be making any code changes relating to plumbing, wiring, parking garage design, or anything else. That remains in the hands of the building department. Next slide, please. So the last time we met, it was at the city councils in 2013. We did this after the first round of engagement where the working group decided, yes, we want to take a look at what a harmonized high performance development standard looked like in Waterloo Region. The Urban Council said, yes, that's a good idea. We since applied for funding, received funding, and were able to hire my colleague, Natasha Ng. She'll be talking in just a minute. Since then, Natasha has been working. We did our second round of engagement. We start to understand the priorities of our community when it comes to high performance development standards. And then in the discussion draft that we'll be releasing on Monday, we put a little bit of flesh to that, to those priorities. We'll be doing several months of engagement starting in January. And then if all goes well, we will have a draft to present to councils at the end of next year. And then if things continue to go well, then the high performance development standards will begin implementation in 2026. So that's all from me, and I'll pass it off to my colleague, Natasha. We'll talk a little bit more about the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. The development of these standards have been led by our municipal working group with representatives across the region, including our local utilities. We have some of our members here today. Next slide, please. We aren't the first community to implement a standard like this. There are 20 other communities in Ontario, so we have lots of precedents to pull from. It's not just the big cities like Toronto and Mississauga that are doing these standards. Caledon, Halton Hills, and Ajax are among the group. The tri-counties of Grey, Wellington, and Dufferin are doing something similar with a harmonized approach, but it will differ slightly based on their individual counties. Next slide, please. And now I'll get into our work to date. Next slide. Engagement has been a priority for this project. We have three major interest groups: staff, industry, and the community. Our formal engagement with these groups began in May of this year with workshops, community booths, and specialized committee meetings. From these, we were able to prepare our draft categories. We further revised them and did internal staff expert review and hosted additional staff workshops. This informed the development of our discussion draft to have metrics with draft targets and or areas of further discussion. Next slide, please. In terms of the community, we had 13 engagements in the form of booths, workshops, and committee meetings. Some of the concerns that were expressed was that the proposed timelines were too slow and were not ambitious enough. So some of the key takeaways were that we should look to some of the other cities that have already implemented a similar standard and align with their work, look at metrics that would have the highest impact in terms of greenhouse gas reductions and prioritize those in the first discussion draft, and to keep in mind equity and affordability. Next slide, please. For industry, we had 5 engagements in the form of workshops and committee meetings. Some of the concerns were that implementing a standard like this would create an uneven playing field, would create complex processes, and affect housing affordability. We are aware of them and have mitigation efforts for all of these. In terms of housing affordability, we know that there would be a small premium to capital costs, but this would help to lower operating costs and reduce the risk of having to retrofit homes after the fact to be consistent with things like climate change standards. Matthew addressed the legal authority, but I would just like to reiterate that this is not a building code standard. What we are proposing is a planning tool and a design standard. Some of the key takeaways from industry are that they are willing to work together on this and appreciate the idea of harmonization. However, this change must be driven by municipalities. Next slide, please. And lastly, for staff, we did 2 main rounds of engagement, one in the spring of 2024 and in the summer of 2024. Staff were asked to rank the proposed metric categories to help us understand the priority and interest areas. Staff were able to provide further comments to help us understand supports needed to achieve the targets, target design, where in the application process it would apply, and the potential for tier 2 targets. Next slide, please. In total, we had 6 staff workshops. Some of the main concerns we heard were that we'd be harmonizing to the lowest common denominator and watering down existing standards, which we don't want to do. The intent was to rise to the highest standard where possible. Some of the key takeaways are that staff are supportive of the idea of harmonization, but more work is needed to ensure the proposed targets are appropriate for both urban areas and the rural settlement areas. There also needs to be time to prepare for implementation and ensure that we are not duplicating existing submission requirements. Next slide, please. We were able to take all of the feedback and input from our interest groups to select the following categories and metrics. So you'll see we have them separated into built environment, natural environment, and energy efficiency with 4 to 5 metrics within each. Next slide, please. So our discussion draft will be posted to Engage WR on Monday for public review. Additional revisions will be required, though. This draft should be read as the start of a more detailed conversation, which is why we're calling it a discussion draft. Some of the targets are more defined than others. So we understand that in some cases, different targets will be required for the urban areas versus the rural settlement areas. And this will be done through further consultations and engagements. Like Matthew mentioned, we'll be doing more formal engagement starting in January. For each metric, the following is provided: alignment with existing climate and energy plans, applicable development applications, so where in the planning process these metrics would apply, the required materials and documentation, and finally the targets. So the discussion draft will be posted again to Engage WR, and we will be sending out an email blast as well if you're subscribed to those. Next slide, please. We recognize the ongoing issue of housing affordability and understand the need to build homes faster. HPDS and implementation procedures will be designed to avoid red tape and to help streamline approvals. We heard and understand that consistent standards across the region is important to the development industry to ensure it is a level playing field. Some initial research shows that it has a minimal impact on the upfront costs. So we will be doing our own analysis on this, and a financial impact study will be developed in partnership with our local developers. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, all of the project information will be posted to Engage WRs, so you can subscribe. There's the link there and the QR code. Next slide, please. We look forward to continuing our work on the high performance development standards for Waterloo Region, and thank you for allowing us to provide an update on this. So Matthew and I, along with Janine and Tim, will be available after for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha and Matthew. And you can stay up. We're a little bit ahead of time, so we're going to allow for questions now. And I know there was one so if there's anything about the transition planning question, I think Chantal had one. So we'll ask Danielle and Justin and Tim and Janine to come up. And remember, Tim and Janine are going to answer the really hard questions, right?
Well, I literally dropped the mic.
That was a mic drop.
Yeah, council. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for your presentations. My question was with respect to the transition period. I'm really glad that we're offering support to the municipalities through that. Is there an end date to that, or will it just be ongoing or as needed, or do we know yet? And I'm really blurry on the screen. I don't really look like that.
Thank you for your question. And through the chair, I would say that support has already been ongoing. As we said, through the working group, we've had a great collaborative effort, supporting the municipalities and understanding some of the tasks that they'll be absorbing and the new roles and responsibilities. And we're engaging in discussions in terms of the specific area that Justin mentioned with the interpretation of the regional official plan, what the length of period may be, and then what we need to put in place in order to enable that. But we're happy to provide that support.
Awesome. Thanks.
And I may just add a little bit further. The planning heads do meet regularly as well. And so there's been a long history of collaboration and sharing, challenges and items to work together. And I understand that intends to continue on as well.
Are there any questions online? Any further questions? I have all these really smart people up here. You must have some questions. There's one online.
Hi, it's Diane Freeman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. My question was with regard to the energy transition piece. I wonder if we could get a little bit more insight in terms of the feedback that we receive from the development industry, because the mayor of Waterloo held an infrastructure breakfast about 2 weeks ago, and there was a lot of folks from the development industry there, and they really felt that the cost of making changes would make housing affordability substantially more. And they were quite contrary minded to using planning tools and felt that we should be more advocating for changes to the building code. And so maybe you could also speak to that piece, whether there's a bit of a two-pronged attack where the building code's concerned as well.
I think Matthew's going to answer because Tim told me I was misrepresenting, saying he was going to answer all the hard questions.
Thank you. Yeah, we talked with the industry a fair bit. I think we had 4 or 5 meetings with the Waterloo Region Home Builders Association. We've had several with the Ontario Home Builders, including 2, I think, next week. We are well aware of several of their concerns, including making sure there's a level playing field harmonized across Waterloo Region, make sure it doesn't affect affordability, make sure it doesn't, the process doesn't get delayed, and then make things too complicated, so adding additional policies in an already complicated regulatory environment. I feel like we do have sufficient mitigation approaches to each of these. In terms of the affordability question in particular, as Natasha said, 20 communities have been doing this across Ontario for nearly 15 years now. There have been many, many studies looking at affordability, and they seem nominal at best. We are working with some developers, again, meetings early as next Monday, we are going to scope out an economic impact study that would look at how much it would cost to meet these additional greenhouse gas intensity requirements. It's expected to be nominal, but we'll find out when the study comes in. Thanks.
May I have a follow-up question?
Sure. Tim is coming forward to add to that, so he'll answer the next question.
Sure. And I guess the question is also about whether or not the intent is to use the site plan tools in the Planning Act, similar to the City of Toronto has done for their green building standards.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. And we started to identify what are the types of tools available in the Planning Act and other places to implement some of these things. The one thing I want to point out is the point we're at today is we're releasing a discussion draft, right? So the conversation doesn't really end here. It's really the beginning. We're very interested in what people have to say about what we're doing, including the development industry, the public, other municipalities, municipal staff. So our intent is to listen to everything that's being said and engage everyone as we move forward, because this is an important piece of our community puzzle. So it's a start, not an end, and we're happy to continue the conversation with the development industry and others. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very kindly.
All right, awesome.
Do we have further questions? Paul Singh, and then in the back row, Sue. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, to make more of as a comment. I'm sure there's a question there too. I agree with what Diana has said. The concern about transfer of costs with the higher building standards. And I think the detail in the feasibility study should definitely help to mitigate that. Additionally, I think the focus, of course, needs to be on the new development, but equally, I think, so on the retrofits as well. I think if we really want to tackle climate change, there needs to be standards put in place as owners are looking to retrofit their existing properties or building increased density along existing structure. Yeah, you know what? We just picked up Paul's Talks Club. My colleagues know this, so you guys know when to cut the mic out. Just I think we have to a kind of a guide for existing homeowners as well as new building standards too. Thanks.
Yes, agreed. Thank you. Part of my job is to look at trends around North America and around the world. Vancouver has a penalty on buildings that emit more than 25 tons of GHG emissions. So retrofits will be a really important thing. There's a building alterations code, which the NRCan has been talking about for a while. So when that pops up, that will be applicable. So we are trying to be ready for that. Yeah, and also there is a program under development called Retrofit WR that is also looking at retrofit programs.
Just a comment that if we don't do it now, then when? We can't afford to wait any longer. And we should have done this 20 years ago. And the programs where they've allowed for the heat pumps to be put in for homes and financial backing. But the more we do it, the more commonplace companies will come in and it will become a standard and the prices will drop. Anything you start from scratch is expensive. And then it builds and it grows. But folks, we have to move forward now. It matters now. And a long-time counselor said, well, Sue, it'll never happen. It won't happen for the next 10 years. And I said, we don't start talking about it and doing it now, and it's not going to happen at all. So I commend you. I think we should go forward with it. I understand everybody's in a tight financial situation now, but maybe by the time it becomes realities, things will have turned around a bit. Thank you.
And, Sue, we're really lucky because these people were all really good elementary school students 20 years ago. So we have them where we need them now. Any further questions? Bryce, we're bringing a mic to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Redmond. I guess I comment first, and then I'm looking for an answer to a question. I just maybe you could balance for me we're hearing from the community that we're not moving fast enough and we're not being ambitious enough. And we're hearing from the development community sort of, I categorize it as sort of stall tactics and concerns around how things are going there. So I just find that interesting. And if you want to comment on that, great. But my question is around the industry engagement piece. You referenced it a couple of times, the uneven playing field. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit for me about what do they see as the fact that it would be uneven, particularly if they were adopted in the approach that you're considering as a harmonized approach across the region? What is their concern around it being an uneven playing field?
So we started looking at this seriously in 2022, and we did some preliminary just pulse checks with some of the developers. And they said, what you don't want to do is have 8 different standards across one region. If you're going to do this together, so we're all facing the same situation, and then we can learn from each other. Because otherwise, whoever has the lowest standard, they're going to get all the developments. That was sort of the fear. So if you do this, let's make sure that's applicable across all of water in the region.
That's really just about harmonization. They want it to be harmonized. That's their main takeaway.
That was from the pulse check from several years ago. That was their main takeaway.
Royce gave a thumbs up for anyone who wasn't watching on camera. Any further questions? 2 thumbs up. Yay. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to ask everyone to take their seats and say thank you very much for very insightful presentations. We have one more, colleagues. Our final presentation today is on Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, and it will be presented by Aaron Mathias, Waterloo Regional Police Services, Connie McDonald, and Fazia Bag from the region. So I would welcome them to the stage.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm Aaron Mathias, the Inspector of Community Safety Partnerships with the Waterloo Regional Police Service, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Connie McDonald and Fazia Beg from the region of Waterloo, and we're pleased to share an update on the Community and Safety Wellbeing Plan with you. We've provided a robust briefing note for you today, and we'll provide a brief overview of the plan and updates, and then invite questions. Next slide, please. Looking at our framework, community safety wellbeing plans are a legislated requirement under the Community Safety and Policing Act, and all municipalities in Ontario are required to have one. The legislation outlines specific partners to be involved in the plan, as well as requirements for strategy development, submission, monitoring, and reporting. Our plan builds on a lot of good work already underway in our communities with the goal to enable every person who calls Waterloo Region home to feel safe, to feel like they are cared for, and to have the opportunity to thrive. Next slide, please. At our update last year, we introduced a new governance structure. And over the past year, we have worked to put this new structure into place. The Waterloo Region Community Safety Wellbeing Plan is overseen by a collaborative steering committee with representation from diverse organizations, sectors, and communities. Supporting governance and implementation are advisory committees, engaging youth and breaking down silos and barriers across systems. Working groups that are really the mechanisms of the plan, coordinating various tables, looking at data, and supporting communications and government relations. We also set up action tables for 3 of 4 identified priorities, and these are made up of the on-ground experts working to advance the plan priorities and develop clear and measurable outcomes for community. Next slide, please. We'll provide a very brief update on priority progress. More detail on these priorities is available in your package. Next slide, please. So we look at our 4 priorities that are addressed under the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan: combating hate, addressing intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, and missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, creating safe and inclusive spaces, and addressing mental health and addictions needs together. I'll provide an update on 2 of these, beginning with IPV, GBV, and missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. In 2023, as we know, the region and area municipalities declared these pervasive forms of violence, excuse me, an epidemic, and called on the province of Ontario to make the same declaration and provide additional resources to address the growing needs for prevention and support. Work on this priority has advanced through the Partners of the Family Violence Project. And this year, the region supported a strategic planning process for the FVP to reimagine a vision to address growing community needs. Again, supported by Kayla and Van. This engagement also included Indigenous partners and members of the Waterloo Region Gender-Based Violence Table. This new strategy provided foundational pieces for the FVP funding application to the Ontario Stands Grant, the province's action plan to address gender-based violence, which is really focused on community planning and service integration. Over the next year, we'll be working on a service inventory, opportunities for service integration, growing partnerships, increasing awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and working with Indigenous-led organizations and community members to support their needs. And lastly, for me, speaking to addressing mental health and addictions needs together, a lot of work has happened within the mental health priority this year. With provincial legislative changes related to the CTS, partners have worked closely together on an application for a heart hub. We've also worked to move the alternate destination clinic model forward and helped launch the Integrated Care Center. A big milestone has been the launch of a new regional mental health and addiction system transformation team comprised of both Waterloo Region Ontario health teams. This new team will serve as the action table for this priority. And I'll pass it over to Fazia for the next two.
The Community Safety Wellbeing Plan recognizes that hate, harm, and discrimination have no place in Waterloo Region. Thank you. Yes. And addressing these is critical to a safe and well community. That's going to require concrete action as a community. This need is only further reinforced by the increasing rise in hate-motivated acts and increasing polarization in this community. So many of us who are working to combat hate also face the personal impacts, challenges, hardships that result from it in our daily lives. This is why getting it right is so much more important. And it's going to require us to take an intentional approach to ensure our efforts are not contributing more harm, but are having meaningful impact. With this in mind, more than 30 leaders across community and sectors and organizations have come together that represent diverse sectors and organizations, including education, mental health, children and youth, newcomer and immigration, rural, healthcare, justice, police, and grassroots organizations. We started our work together by having open conversations about what hate and discrimination looks like, the experience of that, the harm, the supports and services available, the gaps, and how we are failing as a community. We know that not all experiences are the same, and that people's identities and the intersectionalities of these can have a compounding impact on the harm experienced. With this, we're carefully creating an action plan for combating hate that takes into account these complexities, reflects the highest priorities, the opportunities for greatest impacts, and holds systems accountable. Next steps for the action table include continuing to reinforce and building relationships across systems, doing some mapping work to understand where all of the supports and services are available, how reporting is done, and also working towards a community-wide awareness campaign. The fourth priority area is creating safe, inclusive spaces. And we've centered our work on the Reconciliation Action Partnership, and that brings a smile to my face after the heaviness of combating hate. We were fortunate enough to hear from Brian today about what the strategic plan was. And we continue to hear that access to culturally safe and accessible spaces is a very significant community need, especially for the Indigenous community. There are many examples of where we have made collective progress in this area, and this work will continue this year with the RAP and with other community partners who are happy to work with us on this area. I'll turn it over to Connie.
Thank you, Fazia and Aaron. As progress has been made on the 4 priorities, we have also made progress in how we communicate and share the plan. This is a really important plan for all of us. It's one that we want many in our community, all of our community, to be aware of. We did have some feedback as we presented to you and others last year that not everyone was aware of the plan and that there was more that we needed to do to make it easier to understand and to raise awareness. Next slide. And so we undertook a community safety and well-being plan branding refresh process. This included working with an Indigenous designer, Katie Wilhelm, to develop a refreshed logo, illustration, and new icons. The refreshed logo symbolizes a safe and well community across Waterloo Region. It features abstract representations of community landmarks and hands representing community support and the Grand River. The design centers the elements of the Two-Row Wampum Treaty Belt and intentionally includes elements across the region's 7 area municipalities. Next slide. The new brand includes a number of different templates, one which you are enjoying today, the presentation template, and many others that will be launched as the plan progresses. Next slide. And the launch also includes a new website, which we are so excited to be able to share with you, safeandwellwr.ca, which includes simpler information on the plan and one easy place to find information and how to track our progress. Next slide. The easiest way to stay informed is to sign up for our newsletter, which highlights community safety wellbeing plan progress, but also community-wide initiatives and events that support safety and well-being. And anyone can visit the website to subscribe to our newsletter. Next slide. Another piece of feedback that we had as we presented on the plan last year, and certainly something we've heard from municipal and other community partners, is the need and challenge to reduce any potential duplication and to partner more with other collaboratives that are working on community well-being. And so to achieve that, on November 14th and 15th, 3 community collaboratives, including the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, the Children and Youth Planning Table, and the Immigration Partnership, hosted a Forward Together, Activating Change, Amplifying Belonging conference. More than 200 community leaders attended the conference each day, and the conference centered safety, well-being, and belonging across Waterloo Region with keynotes and breakout sessions that were planned to specifically address the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan priorities.
More smiles for me. The Upstream Fund continues to be one way the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan priorities come to life. Next slide. It's an innovative funding model that's community-centered, that fosters care and compassion while shifting power, resources, and decision-making to community. It's one way we're building bridges with systems and historically marginalized communities who face the biggest challenges to safety and well-being. And in my eyes, it's one way that self-determined communities can come to life. Next slide. So in the few years that we've been running the Upstream funding model, almost $12 million in funding has been allocated and distributed. And in 2024, we added the 4 priority areas to the funding model. And you can see from this slide that many grassroots and community organizations are already contributing impact to these priority areas. Next slide. Me, I know. But even more than the dollars is the amplification and impact these dollars have in community. And we've been fortunate enough to experience that as the Upstream team. And we've launched our first yearbook this year as an attempt to kind of capture those experiences and share them all with you. So I encourage you to scan the QR code if you'd like and look through the Upstream yearbook of impact.
An important part of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is working together to identify gaps and opportunities across the 4 priorities. many of which come with funding needs and challenges. And so government relations has been a really important area of focus as we've worked to implement the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan. There's great power in all of us advocating as a community for needs and priorities. And that's just what we've been able to do. This past year, government relations efforts have focused on joint advocacy for resources to support the implementation of initiatives under the 4 priorities of the plan. Community Safety Wellbeing Plan partners joined elected officials at the Roma Conference in Toronto in January, as well as the AMO Conference in Ottawa in August. At both conferences, elected officials and plan partners met with ministers to advocate for funding for local community organizations, as well as greater interministerial collaboration on community safety and wellbeing plan priorities. The core support team has also worked with partners to support a number of funding applications, particularly to support mental health and addictions needs, as well as IPV, GBV, and missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Sorry, next slide. There are a lot of familiar faces up here. We'll pause for a sec. And next slide. So there's more in-depth information in your report. We're currently working on our action plan for 2025 and look forward to providing you with future progress updates. Next slide. That's it for us. Thank you. And we'd be happy to take, at the chair's discretion, any questions based on timing. Thank you.
So thank you all for a great presentation, and so much has happened in the past year. It's great to see our forward movement. Does anyone have a hard question for these good people? All right, Jen does.
Thanks so much, and thanks for giving an overview of this. It's really helpful. Fazia, you mentioned that you wanted to make sure that oh God, that's so weird. I have to not look at my face. I'm just going to look at you. Thank you so much, Chantal. In doing this work, we have to make sure that we are not creating additional harm. Now, many of the members on this legislated community and safety wellbeing plan are part of an institution that I'm a member of, which is I'm a social worker. And then, of course, the police are involved in this as it's legislated. Both of those institutions create immense harm to the communities that the community safety and well-being plan is meant to alleviate harm from. So I'm curious if you're tending to that tension at all and how you might be tending to that tension moving forward.
Thanks for that question. And in honesty, there isn't like one particular answer that can resolve it. I think what it is an ongoing commitment from all of us who are at the table that either personally experience it or know of experiences and are working to change it, to come with an open mind and an open heart to work, to move forward together. And I think ignoring tensions doesn't work. And so it's surfacing them in a way that is safe to talk about and that there's a path forward. But I think certainly acknowledging and trying to address these tensions in our work is one of the ways in which we hold systems accountable. So it's not enough just to say, right, for all of us that these tensions exist, it's what are we doing about it differently that are going to help resolve some of that.
Any questions online? Any further questions from people in attendance? Okay, we have one question.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. I'm really impressed by the collaboration. I was lucky enough to be an audience member on the City of Victoria's 18-month update on the community safety wellbeing, their community safety wellbeing, so Victoria in BC. And, I'm really inspired by the work that we're doing here and the collaboration that we're doing here. And Fazia, I especially love your answer about acknowledging and being able to, look at doing things differently. because there's no value in just having those tensions barricade and box us in and we can't move forward. So just looking at a plan that's, I would say, 18-month mature in Victoria and see their efforts and really see how far ahead we are in bringing those conversations forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Geraldine. The lights are in my eyes, but as soon as you started talking, I knew it was you. Any other questions? Okay, I just want to say thank you on behalf of a very grateful community. I sort of came in at ground zero, and I have to say, when you look at the pillars of our community safety and well-being plan, they are absolutely a reflection of the priorities of our community, battling racism, anti-hate. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that today is actually the National Day of Remembrance and Action Against Violence Against Women. So we remember those who experience gender-based violence and those who have been lost to it. It's also a time to take action. And I would tell you that's what we've just heard. We are taking action to achieve a Canada and a community free from gender-based violence requires everyone living in this community to educate themselves and their families in communities on gender-based violence, center the voices of survivors in our actions, and speak up against harmful behaviors. So thank you very much for putting legs to that initiative. Very important. Thank you all. So I want to thank you all for attending both virtually and in person today. Please join us, those of you who are in person, for the Center Stage Lounge for an opportunity to chat with our colleagues. And if you're not able to stay, please accept my best wishes to you and your family for a wonderful holiday season. And thank you again for coming. I think these all council meetings are so productive and so important.